All right, guys, we are starting our first distance or online learning art project. And we're starting with photography. Now, photography is one of my absolute favorite projects to teach. And the process of taking photos and actually developing them, like you can do in the high school photo classes, is literal magic. Like you put in this blank piece of paper into the developer and it just like changes right in front of your eyes. So while we have to do photography on our phones right now, which is still a good skill for us to have, I want you to know that when you take this class in high school, you're going to have lots more options. So you want to make sure you have your guided notes pulled up, that you're filling them in as we're going through this presentation. So photography is, and this is the definition we'll use, the art of taking and processing photos. And there's all different kinds of types of photography, and these are just a few of them. So some of my favorites are landscape, portrait, candid, still life, abstract, fashion, wildlife, and photojournalism. You might be familiar with some of these words from going through Artix. We've done a landscape painting. So the only difference is that a landscape photo would be a picture of a landscape versus a painting. So landscape is going to be anytime we take a picture of something outside or in nature. So you go in your backyard, you take pictures of the sky. Those are all going to be nature photos. We also have portraits, which are pictures of people. We have candids, which are unposed photos. We have still lifes, which is like objects. So you guys are used to doing that in 2D already. We have abstract photos, which is where you zoom in or zoom out on something to obscure what the object actually is to make it more abstract. We have fashion, which is about the styling of the model and making it look really chic. Wildlife photography with animals. Now, we might not have access to like the jaguars and cheetahs that National Geographic photographers are looking at, but sure, you've got like a cat, maybe there's a bird outside, that can still count as wildlife. And the last one, and I think the most intriguing considering what's going on in America right now, would be photojournalism, which is capturing events as they're happening. So make sure you get those quick little couple word definitions down for each of those types of photography. And you want to be thinking throughout the process of this which 3 types you want to take pictures in. Now, you could do how many are there? 8? 8 types if you wanted to, but there's going to be certain types that you really gravitate towards. For instance, for me, I'm all about candids, portraits, and fashion photography. Those are the 3 things that really make me happy. So we'll figure out what you like to do as well. Okay, our first photographer here is Ansel Adams. Man, would you look at those gorgeous landscape photos? He didn't add a filter to make these black and white. The film that he used actually was black and white. And he would go out and find these beautiful scenes in nature. And he had like an old school camera that was set up on a stand, and he had to put the curtain kind of over him. And he would have to sit there for a really, really long time to get these photos. Now, the picture on the left that we see of the tree, this was a row of trees. So composition is everything in photography. You can see how he isolated that tree. It's really balanced. Our eye shoots straight up the black line of the trunk and then kind of fizzles out with those little branches towards the end. With the waterfall photo, you can see your eye directly goes straight down and then really gets a chance to look around at what else is happening in the photo. So this same scene, if I'm just looking at it, I'm not going to get the same impression. If it's cropped different ways, which means that we cut out different parts of it, it's not going to give the same impression. And so you want to constantly be thinking about composition. Now, you're going to fill in that he's a landscape photographer, and then you're going to write down one thing that you like about his photos. And if you feel like I'm going too fast, you can pause the video. Next up, we have Dorothea Lange, and Dorothea Lange was all about photojournalism as well as portraits. So she actually was a photographer during the Great Depression, and the photo that you see here is arguably one of the most famous photos of all time. So this photo is called Migrant Mother, and you can see here, obviously, the mother, and then she's got 3 babies. She's got a little baby here, and then 2 more here and here, who are not showing their faces. Which I think is a really strong, impactful way that the photo was kind of arranged. Now, because it's photojournalism, we know that Dorothea didn't go and say, hey, can the younger kids turn their heads away so that I can make sure I get a good picture here? This caught her eye and she took a picture of it. A couple things that I really love about this photo are the expression on the woman's face. A lot of people have said that this photo sums up what it was like to be in the Great Depression better than any historical document could, because we can feel the pain in her eyes. And photography, a lot of times you hear the expression, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We really want to be trying to build in concept with our photos as well. And so the way that her brow is furrowed, how they look dirty. There's like mud and stuff all over them. Their clothes are tattered. It looks like they're living in a tent. All of these things are telling us a different picture or a more complete picture about what was happening in that time. And think about how that photojournalism could be applied to what's happening today. This is American history is being made right now. And so as artists, we want to be kind of at the helm ready to document what's going on. So make sure you write down that she does photojournalism and portraits, and then one thing that you like about her photo. And again, she took the picture in black and white. This was not a filter that was added. Okay, next up, we're looking at Michael A. McCoy. He's a contemporary photographer, which means he's still alive, still taking pictures. And he does a lot of portraits. Now, sometimes his portraits can be seen through objects like you see over here with the Warrior League's class photo from like back in the day. And over here we see the use of the army symbol as objects as well as the portrait. Now, this is not a candid portrait. You can tell that he posed the lady or said, hey, I want you to sit here next to this. I want you to look at the camera or not look at the camera. Can you smile or not smile? And so when you're out there taking pictures and you're directing your subjects around, if you have a sibling or a family member or somebody who can help you with the pictures, you can be giving them information about what you want them to do, but that's what classifies it as a portrait versus a candid or something that's like photojournalism. These pictures both still have really strong stories. They still really connect with the human experience. Again, we can kind of fantasize in our head the 1,000 words that might be the story behind this photo. And that's one of my favorite things about photography is we don't have the full story, but our eyes really try to figure out what's going on. So this is Michael A. McCoy, portrait artist, portrait photographer. He is contemporary, so he does filter his photos to be black and white. He takes everything digitally, which means that he could alter the color if he want to, but he chose to put these in black and white, which is going to give a way different feel than keeping your photos full color. So photography is all about composition. If you look at this photo here, zoomed in of the some type of bird, that was one of National Geographic's top photos of the year from last year. And the cropping is what makes it. If this was a zoomed out picture and we saw the beak and, it just wouldn't have the same impact. So the way that he cropped it in, cut in that frame with all these feathers pointing inward, it really directs our eye towards the center of the photo to make a good focal point. This is another National Geographic photo of somebody dyeing fabrics in India. And when we look at this gorgeous arabesque curve here that leads us down, these are called leading lines. And so all of these lines in this photo are pointing me towards the subject and helping my eye get the whole way through the photo, which is really fabulous. This would be something like a photojournalism photo, whereas this one would be wildlife. Over here we have a fashion photo. So we've got a highly stylized person. You can tell that they were accessorized, dressed, told where to stand. And then we've got the background here. Now, this could also be a candid if you were just walking around and you snapped a picture of your friend and they were looking at you. That could definitely be a candid too. Look at the color story that's happening in all three of these. We've got really bright colors. We've got, more dull colors over here, more neutral colors. And they all kind of work together. So you want to think about your photos in isolation. So if you try one that's really neutral, that doesn't mean you can't try a really colorful one later. All right, so our first photography tip is the rule of thirds. Now, the reason it's called the rule of thirds, right? So you split your photo into 3 rows and 3 columns. Okay, now photography tells us, and this is like a scientific thing, it's just most pleasing to our eyes, that we want to see subjects or the main feature. It could be an animal or a person or an object. We want the main subject to be on the corners. So kind of look at where my mouse is hovering around right now. This is where we really like to see focal points in the rule of thirds. So if you're taking a picture of something and you got your subject smack dab in the middle, just shift it over a little bit and it's going to be a stronger composition. Both these photos are absolutely gorgeous. And so constantly thinking of those rule of thirds when you're out in the field taking your photos. rule of thirds. Okay, next up we've got this concept of leading lines. Now, compositionally, we want to direct our viewers' eyes through the photo. And so if you can kind of follow where my mouse is going, both of these are going to lead us through the photo. This one actually also does as well. You can see that like this little jetty here is pointing towards it. So we want those lines to lead us through. Now, with the railroad tracks, they actually look like lines, but if you look at the other photo, it's more of the movement of the photography. Okay, so these lines are drawn, but what we know is that this is just an arrangement and a perspective. So the photographer moved themselves until they were able to get this specific composition. So you can move yourself, you can move your subject, you can change your perspective, like by going bird's eye view, standing up on top of something, worm's eye view, going underneath something and taking a picture upwards. Those are all options. Okay, the last photography tip that I have for you is a focal point. So your eye wants to focus in on one specific subject in a photograph, in a painting, in a drawing. I think this is kind of widespread for composition. And so you really want to zero in on what the main focus of the photo is and ensure that that is what's in focus, that is hitting where the rule of thirds is supposed to hit, and that you have kind of your composition leading towards that focal point. Okay, so in addition to the different types of photography, when I teach this lesson at school, it's a forced perspective photo. So I'm still going to show you guys this. We're still going to take notes on it. And so this is a technique, actually I don't think you're taking notes on this, but it's a technique that's used to create an optical illusion by altering the size or distance of an object. This is definitely still an option in addition to the other types of photography that we've already covered that you might want to do. It's a little bit more straightforward. So you can make objects look smaller by playing with the distance of things, right? We know that this tree, this is right outside of Hawker. We know that this tree is larger than this can of spray paint, but because the artist moved the can of spray paint closer and the tree farther away, it made the tree look smaller. Oops. Okay, you can also make objects look bigger. So this is by bringing the object closer to the camera. So we've got a flower here that's way closer than the person who's standing behind it. We've got a basketball. This one's on the Hawker Grove basketball court. This one's back in the outdoor classroom. And so we see that example here as well. You can also manipulate distance to control size, just in general. So this is on the hill behind my classroom. So the person was standing up on the hill, whereas this person was really close. And it makes it look like there's a tiny person standing up here, as well as a tiny person in a cup, tiny person on your hands. Okay, so this is another way that if you're not feeling super inspired by the types of photography, this could be one type of photography that you explore, which is forced perspective. Okay, here are some other really awesome student examples. So you should just go out and try to take pictures that inspire you, stuff that makes you excited, exploring, experimenting, all of that stuff. You don't have 5 minutes. This is if we did the project at school. But before you go out to take your pictures, and you can look at the schedule to help you figure out when you're supposed to do that, you want to make sure that you prep your prop bag, that you've got your composition rules memorized, and make sure that your phone's charged so you can go out and take a ton of photos. What I tell people is for every 100 photos, you might have one good one. So you want to take a lot of different pictures. When you get back to your house, you can sort through them, figure out which ones are the strongest, and delete the other ones. But you want to give yourself more options going into selecting which photos you want to move forward with. So make sure that your phone is charged. If you don't have a phone, you absolutely can use your computer. The only difference is going to be that you want to set the image up looking at the computer from the photo booth, and then you'll want to get out of the way as you press the spacebar for the photo to be taken. We don't want to ruin the composition by having like the top part of our forehead in there or anything. So yeah. So you guys are going to do some brainstorming tomorrow, looking at some other professional photographers. And then you guys are going to go out into the field, is what they call it, professionally. You're going to go outside around your house, and you're going to take tons and tons of pictures to turn in. If you have questions as we're going through this, remember my office hours. I'll respond to your email between 11 and 1. And the most important thing for me is you to just get out there and get creative. I know you guys can do it. If you have questions, let me know. All right, you got this.